Welcome to Colonize the Ocean podcast, where we discuss oceanic colonization, exploration, and education with your hosts Adam Jewell and Brendan Traxler.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to sort of extract the key insights from really fascinating topics, get you informed without, all the endless reading.
That's the idea. We sift through the sources, pull out what really matters, and give you the context.
So you're curious, you want to understand things better, and yeah, we connect the dots for you.
Think of us as your guides, basically.
Okay, today we are taking a plunge, quite literally, into the world of aquanauts and underwater habitats. We've got some really compelling material here.
We do. It traces the history, humans living and working under the sea, and it kind of looks at where things stand now.
And it really makes you think about the specific value of having people down there in ocean exploration.
Absolutely. And our sources, they take us back to that almost golden age, you could say. Figures like Jacques Cousteau, Rachel Carson, they really capture the public's imagination.
They made the ocean seem vital, interconnected.
Exactly. Not just a resource, but a world needing protection.
Wow.
And that inspired a whole generation, right? People actually built careers around it.
Those stories had real power. Okay, so let's dive in then. How did this pretty wild idea of people actually living underwater, how did it even get started?
Well, it's fascinating when you look at the early stuff. Very bold. The U.S. Navy had its Man in the Sea program, SEALAB.
SEALAB 3 and 3, right.
That's them.
Yeah.
And these weren't short dives. We're talking extended stays, deep down. They were using experimental gas mixes, figuring out how humans could actually function for long periods without surfacing immediately. Big physiological challenges.
Wow. And Cousteau was doing similar things around the same time.
Yeah, concurrently. His conch shelf habitats. Really demonstrating the practical side. Could humans actually reside on the seabed for weeks, do research?
Self-contained underwater houses, almost.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Proving it was feasible. Long-term human presence.
So definitely more than just like scuba diving trips. These were sustained efforts. Our sources talk about advancements too, right? Better breathing gear.
Oh, yeah. Big improvements in underwater breathing apparatus.
Yeah.
And the whole submersible industry just ballooned around then.
A real surge of innovation, all focused on getting into the water.
And you had some really out there ideas being explored, too. I mean, truly forward-thinking stuff.
Like what?
Like humans breathing liquid.
Seriously? Like in the movies?
It sounds like science fiction, but yeah, it was a genuine area of research. Didn't become mainstream, obviously, but it just shows the level of ambition, that experimental spirit back then.
Just incredible. Okay, so you've got all this energy, this focus on putting people in the sea. How did that translate into, national policy? Did it shape priorities?
Oh, definitely. That early wave of enthusiasm, it had real clout. It was a big part of why NOAA got established.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
Right. And the Stratton Commission, which was really important in setting up NOAA's mission, they heavily emphasized that connection. Humans and the ocean resources, food, the economy, everything.
And they specifically wanted people working underwater.
They did. They envisioned this whole network of labs on the continental shelf. Some fixed, some mobile, places where, dozens of divers and scientists could live and work for long stretches.
That's a massive commitment to underwater living. So what happened? Why didn't that vision quite pan out?
That's the key question, isn't it? Because later on, when the U.S. Ocean Commission on Ocean Policy looked at things again, the focus had, it had shifted.
Shifted away from habitats.
Somewhat, yeah. They still saw value in human-occupied vehicles, submersibles for specific tasks. But that big push for aquanauts living long-term, for permanent habitats like the Stratton Commission wanted, it just wasn't as central. Aquarius was mentioned, sure.
That's the habitat NOAA eventually retired.
Exactly. Aquarius. It was acknowledged, but it wasn't really core to their future strategy for ocean infrastructure.
And then, NOAA did shut it down. Why? What were the main reasons?
It came down to budget, mostly. That was in 2012. Budget limitations, and also a kind of reevaluation of scientific priorities. Well, the argument, as one source put it, was about productivity, basically. With limited money, was Aquarius the most efficient way to get data?
Compared to robots.
Compared to ROVs, autonomous vehicles, yeah. The thinking was, while aquarius offered unique chances for humans to observe and experiment directly, robots could often gather, frankly, more data for the same amount of money.
Okay, that's a very practical viewpoint, maybe a bit stark.
It is. And it really highlights that ongoing problem, right?
Right.
Funding for ocean science.
Yeah, our sources kept coming back to that, the general underfunding.
Consistently. Even back in 2004, the U.S. National Ocean Commission was sounding the alarm, warning the U.S. was falling behind other countries, Japan, the EU nations, India, China, in marine tech because of it.
Relying more on foreign capabilities, they said.
Yeah, exactly. Losing ground in a really strategic area.
And that prediction seems pretty spot on based on what we read. Some quite worrying examples.
They are quite stark. I mean, the fact that the U.S. only has one working polar icebreaker right now, that's crucial for Arctic research.
And they didn't renew the deep-sea drillship contract.
Right. The only one they had. A vital tool for understanding Earth's geology, deep ocean processes. It really shows the impact of these funding constraints, maybe even an erosion of U.S. leadership in some key areas.
It does paint a concerning picture, at least for government investment. But okay, the story doesn't end there. Our sources pointed to something else, maybe picking up the slack, the private sector.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting. Because as government funding has maybe stalled or even shrunk in places, you've seen this significant surge in private interest. Private money.
Individuals stepping up.
Big time. You look at people like James Cameron, Victor Vescovo, personally funding these incredibly ambitious expeditions to the deepest parts of the ocean, pushing the limits technologically and just, human endurance.
It feels a bit like that original spirit coming back, doesn't it? That sense of adventure.
It does. And then you have these organized initiatives, like Fabien Cousteau's Proteus Ocean Group. Their idea for an international space station of the sea. That's huge.
What's special about Proteus?
Well, the design is meant to be modular, scalable. A proper next-gen underwater research facility could host researchers from all over, adapt to different scientific needs. Really ambitious.
And then there's deep.
Right, deep. Their whole mission statement is about radically advancing how humans access, explore, and inhabit underwater environments. They're developing the Sentinel habitat system. It's a clear commitment to a future with a more permanent human presence down there.
And we have to mention OceanX, too. James Cameron again, Ray Dalio.
Yeah, OceanX, their ship, the Ocean Explorer, sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Just packed with cutting-edge tech.
But they also focus on communication, right? Getting scientists to talk to the public.
Exactly. Relatable scientists sharing their work directly. It's almost like a modern version of Cousteau's Calypso, high-tech science combined with really strong public outreach.
So it feels like the private sector is really stepping into that gap, trying to fulfill that earlier vision. New tech, plus a focus on engaging people.
In many ways, yes. And our sources suggest that in some specific areas of ocean tech and exploration, the level of private investment might actually be outpacing current government spending.
Wow. That really puts government priorities into perspective, doesn't it? Especially when you compare ocean funding to, say, space exploration funding. The difference is, well, it's huge.
It is pretty striking. Now, obviously, they're different beasts, different scales, different costs. But the source does raise that fundamental question. Does the current public investment in ocean science really match its importance? For planetary health, climate, potential discoveries in medicine.
It makes you wonder about our societal priorities, for sure.
It really does.
Which leads us neatly into this whole challenge of public engagement. Why is it seemingly harder to get people as fired up about the ocean as they are about space?
That's a core issue the ocean science community really needs to grapple with. Our sources are pretty clear. They need to understand public perception better and find better ways to communicate why this research matters.
It was telling, wasn't it, that 2004 workshop about making America care more about the oceans?
Yeah, the fact that they initially forgot to include social scientists. That kind of says it all. A blind spot in how to actually connect with the public.
Seems like a pretty big oversight. You can do amazing science, but if nobody knows or cares.
Exactly. Support dries up. There's research, Jameson and others in 2020, looking at our psychological relationship with the ocean. And sometimes the way scientists talk about the deep sea, all the weird creatures, it can actually create fear or unease, not fascination.
Whereas the space community,
they've nailed the narrative, haven't they? They're incredibly good at advocating for their work, telling compelling stories of discovery, human achievement. It just captures the imagination.
They really have mastered storytelling. You think about astronauts sharing their experiences from orbit. It creates that human connection. Data alone doesn't always do that.
Right. And our source mentioned Dr. Joseph Daturi, didn't it? His 100 Days Underwater recently.
Yeah, that was a great example.
Perfect illustration. A constant stream of data from sensors deep down. Might not make headlines. But the story of a guy living underwater for 3 months, talking to students, the media, people connect with that. It's the human experience.
It's like the space program, isn't it? The robot missions to Mars are scientifically vital, obviously, but the idea of sending people to Mars, that still has this incredible pull.
Exactly the same principle.
Yeah.
And there's maybe a risk, if ocean science relies too heavily on just robots and autonomous systems, are we accidentally taking the human element out of the story, weakening that public connection, that long-term support?
So the argument is maybe putting humans back in the sea in visible, meaningful ways.
Could be a key way to reignite that fascination, yeah. Build a deeper appreciation for the ocean.
And it connects to bigger goals too, right? Like the UN Decade of Ocean Science.
Absolutely. One of their main goals is restoring society's relationship with the ocean. You can't do that without understanding the cultural connections. That's where social science comes in. It's essential.
And looking at policy again, the funding difference between space and ocean stuff, it's even clearer when you look at education and outreach.
It really is. Congress actually gave NASA and NOAA pretty similar jobs, didn't they? Inspiring kids, getting them into STEM fields.
So both agencies are supposed to be boosting science education, building that pipeline?
Yeah, similar mandates on paper, but then you look at the money allocated. It's totally different. In 2024, space education got something like 4 times the funding of ocean education.
4 times, despite having similar goals set by Congress.
Yep. It really makes you question if we're valuing ocean exploration and education nearly as much as we value space, especially when it comes to inspiring the public and the next generation.
Okay, so let's try and pull these threads together. We started with this really ambitious history, didn't we? Humans living underwater, driven by curiosity exploration.
Yeah, this amazing early period.
Yeah.
Then came a shift more towards robots, autonomous systems, partly budgets, partly changing priorities.
But now we're seeing this resurgence, maybe, from the private sector. Lots of investment, new ideas.
And often a renewed focus on actually engaging the public, bringing them along.
Right. So while the tech, the robots, are incredibly important for gathering data, expanding our reach.
Undeniably crucial, yeah.
This deep dive really suggests that keeping that human connection, actively involving people in ocean exploration, it's still vital for building support, for fostering that deeper understanding of just how critical the ocean is.
Couldn't agree more. It sustains everything, doesn't it? We need that connection.
So it leaves us with a pretty big thought, really. Considering how much we don't know about the ocean and how incredibly important it is, what are the long-term risks if we lean too heavily just on robotic exploration, if we lose that human element?
And maybe more practically, how do we bridge that gap? The gap in public engagement, the gap in funding? How do we make sure we're properly exploring and protecting our oceans for the future?
It seems like finding that balance, between the amazing technology and that direct human experience, that's going to be absolutely key as we keep exploring the underwater world.
Finding that sweet spot.
Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us.